Remember growing up making the perfect mixtape was an art? It would take hours or even days to get the mood just right. It's an art that's nearly been lost in today's drag and drop digital playlist world.
We're four friends of 35 years with many, many mixtapes between us. Join us each episode as we pick a theme, discuss the songs, and build an infinite mixtape. Welcome to the Mixtape Diaries.
Back we are again in a relative hurry with the full complement here, the fearsome foursome, the Fantastic Four. That's not a bad appellation, the Fantastic Four. Except one of us gets to be Mr. Fantastic and another of us has to be the Thing.
I'll be the Thing.
Do we have
Carla has to be
licensing rights
invisible
to even speak to
Great.
this?
Rewind.
I feel like there might be licensing issues here.
It's all about the quality of the product. I think they would want to be associated with us when they see how we do it.
We can only hope they hear it.
Yeah, true. And we spell for F-O-R. They spell for F-O-U-R.
Sure.
Because they're English.
So we have the golden arcs. Yeah.
Right.
It's clobbering time. We're just Bob, Carla, Mark, and Brad at your service with another 4-track episode of your Mixtape Diaries. How is everybody today? It's good to see everybody's face.
Yeah,
it's great to
we're
have
all
us.
here.
Yeah, it's great to have us all back together.
Band is back together.
It's like you feel like you have all your arms and legs again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels right.
Well, Happy New Year, first and foremost.
Yeah, first episode of 2024.
Can you believe it? What is this, our third year now of getting into it? Is this considered season
4,
episode 1, or is it calendar year? Did we decide that? I guess we can workshop that later. So what are we doing today?
We're doing announcements. Actually, I was thinking that we should spin the wheel, and whoever it lands on just has to do the announcements right extemporaneously. See how it goes.
Oh God.
Wow.
This is my worst fear all through school.
I was going to say that sounds like a terrible plan.
You're gonna really make my anxiety spiral.
Right. Why don't you just do the business, Brad?
All right, hold on a second.
You should specify the business that he's going to do.
Oh my God, the scatological stuff already. It's too early. It's January. We can't be talking about poop until at least April.
March? Oh.
Something like that. Yeah. Let's spring before we spread the fertilizer. Okay, so announcements. Our project here is to build a playlist. It's got a lot of songs on it. It's got a shitload of songs on it. I don't know how many songs are on it. If you want to know, you can go check it out on Spotify. Search for Mixtape Diaries on Apple Music. Hopefully you'll find the same songs on both. I feel like I've been maybe a little bit I've been negligent about getting it updated. So if you are listening to us, you found us. We're on all kinds of outlets. On all those outlets, give you the opportunity to rate, review us, say some kind things, give us the 5 stars, expand our reach. Tell your friends. We know you have friends. We need to come together over something. And if you're going to come together over music and the Mixtape Diaries, that's not a bad way to solve all of society's problems. So get out there, spread the word.
No pressure.
Preach the gospel of Bob, Mark, Carla, and Brad. We're as good as the other 4, right?
Sure.
Yeah. We bring the good news. So you can also connect with us on @MTDiaries on Twitter, in between shouting rants about politics and bullshit and whether Michigan cheated, because they did cheat. That shouldn't be under discussion.
Whoa.
Sorry. You wanted me to do the announcements? I did the announcements. Michigan cheated.
Sure. We were kind of feeling like you were just going to do the announcements as they relate to the Mixtape Diaries, but you
apparently had other things you needed to get off your chest.
I mean, we've got election year, we've got
Michigan cheating
and cheating scandals. Is there any? We've got fertilizing in the spring.
Right.
We've got okay.
It's only first week of January, Brad.
We're kind of refiguring out our shit.
You got to pace yourself a little bit, I think.
Yeah, easy. Deep breath. Deep breath.
So today's episode is I feel like we've done a kind of one other special, almost impromptu kind of episode, and this one kind of falls along those same lines of our theme today is Pogue's Shane MacGowan songs. He passed away right at the end of 2023, and we thought it would be appropriate to jump on and kind of pick some of our favorites and put together a quick little episode. So we've got 4 songs today that we're going to talk about. So this will be a shorter episode, but we wanted to make sure that we were maybe a little timely with this episode.
We all big Pokes fans? Yeah? Yeah?
I think so.
Hands
Yeah,
down.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah. Shall I go ahead and kick us off here?
I think you shall.
Alrighty. So we are recording this song here the first week of January, and so appropriately, my song is Fairy Tale of New York.
They got cars big as bars, they got rivers of gold. But the windows right through you, it's no place for the old. When you first took my hand on a cold Christmas Eve, you promised me Broadway was waiting for me. You were handsome.
You were pretty queen of New York City
When the band finished playing, they held up.
So I think this song is kind of feels like it's a Christmassy kind of song. It
is.
It gets yeah.
It's more of a Christmas song than Die Hard is a movie about Christmas.
Yeah, okay, I'll
Yes?
give you that. Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. It shows up on all sorts of lists as one of the best non-carol Christmas songs, which is kind of interesting because really, if you sit down and look at the lyrics, it's really not much of a Christmas song.
No. The lyrics
but
are
it-
so great.
But I understand how it kind of works out that way. So everybody probably knows this song. It's maybe arguably one of their most famous songs. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's by far their most
I think it's the one.
well-known
Yeah.
song.
Yeah. So I hadn't intentionally picked this song because of that. I picked it for a couple interesting reasons. This song, Krista and I ran a business of shooting wedding videos. And one year, we had a couple that was getting married on New Year's Eve. So that was all well and good, and we knew that was going to be kind of a big party. But one of the things that we didn't find out until very, very late in the game is that they are big fans of a cover band from Cleveland called the Boys from County Hell. And so this band, it's the closest I've ever been to seeing the Pogues live. They were incredible. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So the groom had arranged, unbeknownst to his new wife, that they were going to be the band at their reception. They had picked a DJ and everything, but this band had set up in their banquet hall where they were going to have their reception. And we were in a beautiful venue that was overlooking downtown Cleveland. It was snowing that night. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect. So as they got ready to enter into their reception, the DJ was playing music for the rest of their bridal party to come in. And when they got ready to come in as a couple, the Boys from County Hell took over, and the bride had no idea. And from that instant on, the rest of the night was totally insane.
That's
so this
awesome.
was their song that they danced to.
Was that well received by the bride? Like last minute
Oh
change,
yeah,
surprise?
she was out of her mind. She had absolutely
Good for
no
her.
idea. Yeah, it was great. So the DJ would play for a little while, but then the band would come out and play a set, and the place just was insane. It was so cool. and a huge surprise for her that night. So it was super cool to kind of see all of that take place. So that was a lot of fun. So to me, this song always kind of brings back that night that we were shooting that wedding, because it was something else. Well, so one of the other things that I figured out about this song, which is kind of interesting, it's a duet. It ends up being a duet. It doesn't really start that way necessarily, but it ends up being a duet. The other vocalist is Christy McCall, and one of the things that's crazy, once you start looking up who she is, she has sang vocals or backing vocals on practically every album that we've talked about in this entire list of the Mixtape Diaries. It's insane. She did the backing vocals for Happy Mondays Hallelujah, which we just did in an episode. But she,
is that right? Wow.
Yeah. When you start to look up Christy McCall, I mean, she has the last thing that I'll kind of touch on here a little bit with this song, just because I think it's so popular and everybody knows it. Hyperbole to say everybody. She kind of worked as an engineer or a producer on a lot of albums too. She worked with Lillywhite as he was working on.
Well, she was married to Steve Lillywhite.
Yeah, they were husband and wife. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she from what I heard, she was just on hand. They were thinking about trying to get Chrissy Hind to do the vocals on this, and she just happened to be standing by, and she did a take.
Yeah.
And she's perfect.
Right. So it's totally crazy when you look up who she is and kind of everything that she has touched in her career. Kind of cool.
She died tragically in a boat accident.
Yeah.
She was hit by a billionaire's yacht that was. So I knew that she had died, but I didn't know this part. He was riding. He was riding fast through like a swimming zone, like a no wake zone.
Yeah.
And she was trying to get her children out of the way so they wouldn't get killed.
Right.
And she died. It's a horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible story.
Yeah, I think she was only like 41 when she died.
Yeah, she was super young.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Super young. Yeah.
And I found this kind of interesting because this is definitely a huge back and forth that has happened over the last several years, is that there's a lot of controversy around some of the lyrics of this song and slang that has been used in it. And it's kind of interesting how much it has gone back and forth, and how much even surviving members of the Pogues kind of view the lyrics. And I find that kind of interesting that there is kind of this back and forth, and that even so far as like the BBC radio stations, some of them will play the original lyrics, some of them will play new, I guess, cleaner lyrics. And even over its history, the band has kind of gone back and forth on kind of how they see those lyrics. And so that's kind of interesting that you have this song that everybody kind of considers this nice Christmas song, and really you start digging into it, and it has kind of this a really deep lyrical controversy that goes along with it. It's kind of interesting that I don't know if people really kind of consider that when they consider that it's this nice Christmassy song, but there you have it.
It's right there, man. The F slur is right there. And so from time to time, when my family gets together, my daughter and her cousin try to organize talent shows, which tend to go really well for the people in the family who are talented, and much less so for when I get involved. So, for example, my Brother Loves Traveling Salvation show, lip syncing, crashed and burned dramatically, as did my sister and I doing Fairy Tale of New York and forgetting that this language was going to surface in the middle of the song.
Yes.
We
Were
would have
you
been
saying
far.
you're an old slut on junk?
Yeah. To my sister. Yeah. We would have been much better off with "Don't You Want Me, Baby" by the Human League. So don't perform this to your family. As excited as you are for the song and how awesome it is.
Right.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah,
That was-
be mindful of which version you put on that Christmas mix that you send out to your family, right?
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting because you asked at the start of this, Newell, is this a Christmas song? And I think everybody quickly said, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'll cite a few factoids here from Wikipedia as a source here. I'll probably have to leave a $2 donation after this just to be in fairness. But, per the source, in the UK, Fairy Tale in New York is actually the most played non-carol Christmas song of the 21st century, which is funny given the language content of the song in there for sure.
Yeah.
But I've always thought of it as such. And then the origins of the song are a little bit debatable, other than MacGowan did confirm that it was written in 1985. And he insists that the song arose from a result of a wager made between the producer at the time, Elvis Costello, and him around whether the band would be able to write a Christmas hit single. So here you go with Fairy Tale in New York, which is by far the most downloaded Pogue song. It seems to be the most played non-carol Christmas song, at least of our generation's time. And while the content and the lyrics and some of the vernacular in there can be a little bit racy at times, I always consider it a very fun and playful and joyous song when I hear it. And maybe that's the joy of the Pogues, which we didn't really dive into maybe at the beginning before you hopped into the song, but just talking about the Pogues and Shane MacGowan and what they meant to us before we hopped into the songs. And maybe we can dive into that as we go, as we tribute, but certainly that melody and, I don't know. Anytime I hear the Pogues, I want to be in a pub drinking Guinness and ultimately singing along. And, this song to me epitomizes that in all its glory.
I think that is one of the things that makes this song in particular kind of stand out, is that it feels like a Christmassy song, and that I feel like now when you do hear it, you really only hear it around that time of year, but you'll hear all these other Pogue songs, and I guess for lack of a better word, they have a different feel. That, you listen to any other Pogue song and, yeah, you're ready to be drinking a pint or two in a dirty old bar someplace. But this is like this kind of Christmassy song, and so you don't kind of feel that same way about it. So it is kind of a weird juxtaposition between all of their other catalog and then this one song.
What you said, Mark, about how it really is like the essence of what the Pogues stand for. I think that's really important to point out, because it really is, right? Of course, this is a Christmas song, and it's about conflict. It's about mudslinging. It's about the hard times, but it's also about something beautiful. It's about a relationship. It's real, right? It's about sort of humanity and like what we are and what we stand for with all the warts. And no one better than Shane MacGowan to tell this story. He tells much the same story in all of his songs. This one just happens to be set in December in New York City in the drunk tank.
Right.
But that's I think what's so enjoyable about them is that there's this, and I'll talk about this when my song lands. They can make such beautiful, gorgeous, heavenly music, but they were also all coming from, there were a bunch of punks from London celebrating the ugly. I remember Shane MacGowan's teeth was the first thing I remember about the Pogues. I remember him, like, them being on MTV or Saturday Night Live, and I'm like, oh my God, this grunting man and his teeth. Like, what is that, right? What is that about? I bought this record after college, I was traveling. I was in London, and I got on a train to go north toward Manchester. And we were stopped in York, and I was walking on the walls of the city when this came on my Discman, and it stopped me in my tracks. That and Laid by James. I remember when I first heard, like, I'm walking down the street, and this was like, I think June, July, right? It wasn't Christmas. Now it's on my Christmas mix, and it's probably the song that, like, you know, I took a flyer on it. Disc was on sale at HMV or whatever. And then I went on a Pogues binge that lasted for like probably 3 years after that. Just right. And this was the hook, because it's beautiful and ugly and perfect and imperfect at the same time. You know, love it. 100 points, Bob, for the picking the best song. 50 points deducted for being obvious. Yeah.
Well, and like I said at the beginning, I mean, the biggest reason why I picked this song was just because of the memory I have of seeing, admittedly, a cover band play it. But, yeah, I mean, as close as I'm ever going to get to seeing it played live. So that was just a fun memory. And when we decided to do this episode, for me, it was an instant no-brainer to pick this song. So
I just looked them up. They're still playing around Cleveland, the boys from the County Hell. They're playing in March.
And they are a big band too. I mean, there are like 8 or 9 of them in the band, so it's really a super faithful recreation of the Pogues, and they were crazy good. Just awesome to see, and it was a fun way to spend that evening too. So there you go. That is my pick, Fairy Tale of New York.
Nice one.
No complaints. Obvious,
Brad,
but no complaints.
Are you playing your flute to transition us to the next song? I feel like, aren't you supposed to be fluting us into the transitions?
Well, it's not a flute. It's a tin whistle. And in the great tradition of so Carla's next. Is that what we're doing?
I guess
Seems that way.
So build up to this?
Fine.
Okay. All right. To celebrate Carla's song. Oh, gosh, now that I actually have to do this into the recording.
Pressure. No pressure.
Oh, God. Do over. Hold on a second.
This is an adult. Feel like we're in kindergarten music class.
Oh, nailed that one. Nailed it the second time.
Okay.
Nailed it is maybe kind of being generous, but
yeah. So Carla, in case,
yeah.
So,
although Carla, your song seems very obvious after that rendition by Brad. Do you want to share with us what your song is?
just in case
Identify
you're still
the
not
corpse.
sure
Yeah.
what that song was. It's A Rainy Night in Soho.
oh, I thought he was going for
Are
it.
you going to
again.
play underneath me talking about the song? Perfect.
Go. Focus.
So the song, so A Rainy Night in Soho was originally released in '86 on the Poetry in Motion EP. Now you can find it on that expanded version of Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash. I cannot keep going with that in the background.
Oh,
I'm done.
dear listeners.
Never had one lesson.
Never had one.
Right. So which album does this appear on?
Well,
Keep after
originally
it.
it was.
Come on. Hold your nerve.
Originally, it was on the Poetry in Motion EP. Now you can find it on that expanded version of Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash. That was released in the U.S. in 2006. That was just a remastered album that has 6 bonus tracks, and it includes all the Poetry in Motion EP and then the B-sides to Dirty Old Town.
I've been loving you a long time. Down all the years, down all the days. And I've cried for all your troubles. Smile at your funny little ways.
this is just a Pogue song that I've always loved. I love their melodies, and the melody of this one just really kind of like sucks you in, like all of their songs do. I wrote down what we've already said, that it makes you want to sit down at your local pub on a cold, rainy winter day and share some pints with your friends. Like, that's just what these songs invoke for me, but I've always loved this one in particular. An interesting note that I found in the research for this song was there were 2 recordings and various mixes of this song that they recorded in the studio. MacGowan and Elvis Costello, who produced this record, clashed over the final mix of the song. MacGowan preferred a version that featured a cornet, and Costello preferred a version with an oboe. The cornet version is the one that was actually used, except for Canadian editions of that EP, which used the oboe version.
Yeah,
we Canadians love oboes. Yeah, we love them. We love them.
So there is a third version that combines elements of both the mixes, and that was issued on the 1991 Poetry in Motion reissue, and it's available on the Hell's Ditch CD too.
I will now play this song on the oboe for you.
God, I wish that was the truth.
I do too, actually.
I just thought that was interesting. I mean, MacGowan and Costello were always kind of at each other, so it's not surprising that they were like clashing over instruments, because I think there was a lot of clashing in the studio with them.
I didn't realize that. A couple things for me here. When's the last time you even said the word oboe? Not to get sidetracked, because I don't know that I've said that word in maybe 20 years. And number 2, more specific to the subject that we're speaking about, this is a fantastic song, Carla. And similarly, when I get into my song later, for me, this song, the song I'll speak to, epitomizes to me what the Pogues is, which is drinking pints in pubs. This is a classic one. And the only thing I wanted to add about this song, which was kind of cool, is at the funeral for Shane, his really good friend Nick Cave actually played this song at the funeral, and there's a really cool video out there of Nick playing that at in honor of Shane. So it's really lovely. And so
he looks like he's about to cry.
Yeah,
the whole time.
Great pick, especially since we're kind of memorializing Shane a little bit here today. So.
Yeah, well, and Brad got to hear a special edition of this song as well.
Yeah, so
his flute version.
Aside from his tin whistle.
Sadly,
version.
No, I was not invited on stage at the Sphere when U2 played this. So we saw U2 on the Friday after Shane died. First opportunity for Bono to pay tribute, and yeah, he mixed this in. It was lovely, right, as you can imagine. Bono, I think they were pretty, I don't know how close they were, but they strike me as closer than I had thought. And so he seemed really affected. And it was just it was another capper on a pretty great night seeing U2. So beautiful song.
It's interesting. I feel like we got together and talked about Sinead after she passed. And I think it was all much more emotional for us, because I think all felt, I don't know, I guess deeper with Sinead, maybe generationally or whatnot. But I think it's kind of how Shane maybe struck individuals. He had this kind of punk, abrasive, no teeth, unapproachable thing about him. But then there's a softness and camaraderie to him that you get through the lyrics and through wanting to drink in pubs and sing along with them. So there's this kind of engineered tension, for lack of a better expression, to with him and our relationships with him. And so when I heard when he passed, I was really bummed, but it wasn't emotional like it was with Sinead. Like, I actually cried when I heard about Sinead, but
me too.
It maybe reminds me, like, for me, if we're talking Shane, my favorite story, because you're talking about Bono and how close he was, I think Shane was probably close to, seems like he was close to a lot of people and you don't realize it. I mean, like, people like Tom Waits and Billy Bragg and Bruce Springsteen memorialized him at the funeral. And I remember hearing a great story from Kiefer Sutherland about Shane MacGowan and his experience with them. And like all these people start coming out. And I'll just do a quick story because it's probably my favorite story about Shane MacGowan is Kiefer Sutherland walked into a pub one point, and he told the story, I think, on the Late Show or one of the late night talk shows. And he talks about walking to a pub and seeing at a back booth 4 people sitting there. And those 4 people were Van Morrison, Sinead O'Connor, Shane MacGowan, and Ronnie Wood. Ronnie Wood being of the Rolling Stones. And Kiefer knew Ronnie, and so he went back to say hello and was introduced. And of the 4 of them, Sinead was the only one not drinking. Apparently she was drinking milk, but the rest of them were deep into pints. And so Kiefer sat down and joined them. That proceeded to get into a political conversation around Scotland, of which Shane and Kiefer got in a pretty heated argument about. Long story short, they end up rolling around on the ground fighting, and Kiefer ultimately excuses himself and embarrassed by it. And later on in the evening, the bar's getting ready to close, and he gets a tap on his shoulder, and it's Shane MacGowan. And he says, "Oi, I need a place to stay." And Kiefer's like, "What the hell? We just fought, and what happened to all your mates?" And he's like, "Well, they all left me." And he's like, "I need a place to stay." So Kiefer says, "Okay, well, let's have a drink." They have a drink, close the bar. He takes them back to his place, makes up a bed for him. They go to sleep. Kiefer gets up early the next morning and expects Shane to still be there because it's relatively early, and they were pretty pissed drunk the night before. And Shane's gone. Blankets are folded to perfection, like housekeeping style. And there's a sweet note on there that he doesn't regurgitate, but just says like it was the nicest letter or note he'd ever read by somebody. And it was just such a polar opposite of who Shane was when he met him, fighting on the floor, to like getting a thank you note and staying in it. Anyway, this is probably a little more long-winded, and Carla, feel free to edit the shit out of this later. But it's just, to me, epitomizes what Shane MacGowan was, which is he had this warmth to him, and then he had this like aggressive punk rock, get the fuck out of my way to him as well. So anyway.
Interesting to think about the different reactions I think we probably all had to Sinead versus Shane. I think for me, I felt like we lost Sinead too early, and that this world did not treat her well and maybe didn't deserve her. Shane MacGowan, I mean, God, if you had said, all right, Shane MacGowan, Kirsty MacColl, who's going to be alive in the year 2023, right? Like,
no one's picking Shane MacGowan.
Yeah. Wow. So he was a survivor, and he lived long enough to be really appreciated and like national treasure type for Ireland, like maybe the way we think of Bill Murray. And to see that kind of outpouring of love and affection at his funeral, it was, I don't know, I guess he was sort of more of a beloved public figure that we could celebrate his life rather than mourn what could have been or mourn his death. Pretty amazing character. Some of the stories they told, I mean, it's worth just going on and sitting through that whole funeral and hearing some of the stories that were told about Shane MacGowan on acid, talking to dead Irish poets, and then coming out of like the bathroom with fully formed songs. It's like that he says were dictated to him by the dead. Like, okay, and wherever they're coming from, man, they're awesome. They're great works of literature, I think.
It's fun to look. I peeked on All Music for both the records that we've been talking about today, and it's, how they have the moods and themes for like an album on there, and for Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash, the theme is only drinking. That's what it says. Drinking.
I mean, there is rum in the title, so
yeah. Not so bad that we stopped there, I suppose.
The moods are funny. Like all the different moods are pretty comical for this one. They're exactly what you would think that they would be. They're like brash and aggressive, confrontational, fiery, rollicking, rousing.
That's such a great record.
It's fantastic. I mean, was there 2 or 3 of our songs today came off that? Two songs came off about
I
it today?
think 3 because actually,
3.
Brad, your song was included in the expanded edition, even though that's not like this song.
Yeah.
It's not where it originally landed, but was put
it's
on
all in
there
that
later.
same 85, 86 time period. I think all of our stuff came out. Yeah. Should I talk about mine? Or are we
Go for it.
more? Yeah. So mine was also on the Poetry in Motion EP. Which
Wait, aren't
really,
you playing us in? Aren't you going to play us into your song?
He only
Oh no,
knows
I got
that one
nothing.
song.
I got one song. Yeah. Oh, it would be bad.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was very particular in why I picked.
Why you told Carla to pick her song? You're like, Carla, this is the song you're picking. Oh.
That is the manageable one. Yeah. So mine is The Body of an American. Also, as I said, on Poetry in Motion. That was released in between my 2 favorite records of theirs, right? Which is Rum Sodomy and the Lash, 1985, and If I Should Fall from Grace with God, which was, I guess it's 1988 that came out. So there was a fair amount of time in between. I guess enough to put together an EP, but maybe not a full album. I don't have the EP. It just happened that right when I kind of lost myself in the Pogues, that Napster was happening. And so I pulled this song, a ton of live recordings and other B-sides down before all that got shut down. Bob, I think you were the person who first told me about Napster. And I remember like you telling me, I was like, what are we talking about? Like, are you kidding? Like, really? We can just take what we want? I took about 100 Pogue songs off of Napster. That's what I did. I went with this track because it kind of has both faces of the Pogues in it. It starts and ends with this kind of gorgeous, complex, very Celtic instrumentation. And in the middle, there's that kind of signature punk inflection, right? That rollicking, ramshackle, forward drinking song. So I wanted to kind of capture both. I've always loved this song. I think it's gorgeous, and I think it's really fun.
When a tinker boys they hissed advice but were with a pen. When we turned and shook as we had a look in a room where a dead man lay. So big Jim Dwyer made his last trip to the shores where his fathers lay. And 15 minutes later we had our first taste of whiskey.
It's about a funeral, and it might be that the structure of it kind of does capture the Irish funeral tradition, right? There's this very careful, delicate treatment of the body to prepare Big Jim Dwyer, in this case, for the wake. And then 15 minutes later, the party gets started, and it gets a little out of control. And then once that's over, right, solemnity reigns again as he's laid to rest. The story here is that Big Jim Dwyer was a boxer, and he beat the hell out of everyone they put in front of him. So Ireland reigned supreme. It's not entirely clear what happened to him, but he may have been killed in the war. Just really masterful scene setting from Shane here. First, describing the wake. The hearse is broken down. It won't start, so they're trying to hotwire it. There are uncles in the room giving lectures on ancient Irish history. The women are getting frisky, so on. Some really rich detail as we look back on Jim Dwyer's life. He fought the champ in Pittsburgh, and he slashed him to the ground. He took on Tiny Tartan, and it only went one round. Like, get the fuck out of here, Scottish boxers. This guy was a folk hero, kind of like Shane MacGowan became, I think, for a lot of us. Just a fun song. It might be my favorite just because it kind of has all the elements in it.
Well, and I think it's one of those songs that perfectly epitomizes Shane MacGowan's lyric writing, and that his songs
Absolutely.
were all these incredible little stories. I mean, without a doubt, all of their songs are like that. But I think this is just like the pinnacle of the storytelling that they do in their songs.
Is Shane MacGowan the Irish version of Paul Westerberg?
Oh.
Like,
I mean, that's a fair comparison.
I might have said Bob Dylan, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Bob's a little pre-me, so I
Yeah.
think, for me, I was.
I mean, I think you
not.
could make the argument that Paul Westerberg is as self-destructive as Shane MacGowan.
Right? Like, both
yeah, well,
had
that's,
certain era.
that's
yeah.
in that respect, right. Much more Westerberg than Dylan. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because, I just think about Shane's antics and Paul's antics, and yet they're these just
Amazing songwriters.
amazing songwriters, poetry, and then the delivery of it can be so abrasive and punk rocky
Yeah,
in that sense that it's anyway interesting.
Well, and just kind of living poetically, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I was studied English lit, right? So they're the romantic poets, and they wanted to live romantically and live as they wrote, right? Like these guys, it's kind of that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think poetry is like a like, who knows, like a modern day poet, but we all know rock singers who are poets.
Yeah.
Stipe, Westerberg, MacGowan, Dylan, Patti Smith. They're the
Lennon.
modern day poets.
No, and I think it's one of those things too that you kind of wonder if somebody like Shane MacGowan, had it not been for his substance abuse, what would he have been instead? Because he's without a doubt a literary genius, but from all accounts, that was his background, was that he was a student of literature.
Yeah.
And really,
He won prizes. He won writing prizes. Right.
And it is the thing that pushed him into kind of the blue collarness of a band. The fact that he couldn't stay in school, that every school he attended, he got kicked out of. So he never went down that path, and ended up down the path of playing in bands, in pubs, at night, doing shady things, but that was just the nature of the beast for Shane MacGowan.
And he was another one of those people who chased the Sex Pistols around and was at every show, was a public figure. He was like Susie and Chrissie Hynde and Billy Idol. I mean, you can rattle them all off. That was a resource for him, or that was a home for him. And so then he integrates that scene, that sensibility with being an awesome literary writer who lives in this tradition with James Joyce. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Like crossing James Joyce and Johnny Rotten, and you get this, right? Love it.
I mean, I have nothing else to add. This is a great. I mean, is there a bad song to pick? But this is just another pretty great one, and I think the way you set it up, Brad, was as eloquent as anything. So nothing more to add, just other than I love this song so much, and have been listening to it quite a bit since it made our thread as your choice, as your lockdown. Does that lead us to the fourth and final song of our little tribute?
I think it does.
Great. All right. Well, this has long been my favorite song by the Pogues, and it's A Pair of Brown Eyes, which also appeared on the album Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash, the 1985 release. And this was a single. It was their first single that actually made the UK Top 100, believe it or not. Peaked at 72. And obviously, like I said, off their second album.
Where the wind was gently laughing, and a roving, I'll go. A roving, I'll go. And a roving, I'll go. For a pair of brown eyes. For a pair of brown eyes.
This is one of my favorite songs, maybe the favorite song for me, because similar to how Carla spoke earlier, it always makes me think about drinking pints in pubs, and specifically, it always makes me think about drinking pints in a small pub in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, called the Toucan, of which Mr. Newell on this podcast has actually been in with me and potentially, if not heard this song in that very pub with me telling this story, definitely heard a Pogue song in that pub, because there is not an evening in that pub where you don't hear multiple Pogue songs. So it's just this dark, small, 800 to 1,000 square foot pub with limestone walls and wooden bar stools and bar top, and you just go in there and drink pints and sing along to whatever is on the speakers in there, a lot of times the Pogues. And so for me, it just kind of is where I think my exposure to the Pogues started, was in pubs, actually. That's how I discovered them and came to explore them further. And so I always have fond memories, some of them foggier than others, but of the Pogues and drinking in this pub in Kingston, Ontario in my late teens, early 20s, specifically time period wise. This song just, I don't know, for me is kind of classic Pogues. You know, it tells that story of love, loss, and the haunting memories of war, which just feels so Irish. And so, and I just think as we were, speaking, even though Shane MacGowan has this just gruff, rough side to him, he just beautifully conveys the emotions that linger in hearts from these types of experiences. And so I don't know, it's just classic sing-along pub song, and that's why I picked it. Not much more to say about it. Do you remember the Toucan, Newell? That's, I guess, my first question.
No.
Then we did our job.
Then you definitely were there. Yeah.
I was going to say that probably means we did it right. So,
but you do remember coming to Kingston and going to a few pubs.
I do remember that, but I do not remember that specific.
I think that was in the fall of '92.
Yeah. So that probably means we had a good time.
Yeah. Fall of '92 or fall of '93. Those would be my guess as to which year. But anyway, shout out to Rob Beck out there, who is one of my dear friends as well. But he's who we went to visit in Kingston during their kind of homecoming time period. And we proceeded to hit a pretty decent pub crawl into the Toucan, drinking Guinness and singing Pogue songs.
I do not remember that. I remember being there, but gosh,
it's okay.
It's a long time ago.
I'll chalk it up to old age.
Yeah.
How about that?
or real pints of Guinness.
Yeah, it's probably that.
One summer evening, drunk to hell, I sat there nearly lifeless. What a freaking first line for a song.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like so many of these songs are like that, where that first couple lines are just, you're like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
But
there's so much more to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Every one of those songs is like that. It's like reading the first lines of a novel. You're like, well, okay, I've got to set the tone in these first couple lines, and I'll be damned if every one of these songs doesn't do it. That just from those first couple lines, you're like, yeah, okay, now I have to listen to the rest of this song.
Yeah. And second verse, right? In blood and death, neath a screaming sky, lay down on the ground, and the arms and legs of other men were scattered all around.
Yeah.
So like now he's at war. It's just gut wrenching.
So the thing that I kind of find funny about this is that you have Shane MacGowan writing lyrics like this, and I don't know if this is going to come across quite exactly the way I mean it, but and then you have the Sex Pistols, who I think are in kind of the same vein at the same time. But the Pogues songs are so, for these being, early 80s, 84, 85, 86 probably is the band is forming. And they are so polished lyrically and sonically. And then you have punk arriving at kind of the same time, that it's so opposed to it, but you know that these bands were all crossbred, that they all knew each other, they were all influencing each other, but the Pogues stand out, I think, from a lot of other music that you hear from that time, just because of their lyrics.
Yeah, it's like the punks grew up. Shane MacGowan was in a band called the Nips, and which was short for nipple erectors. Yeah. So not a flatly racist name. It was short for nipple erectors. I almost picked the song Gabrielle, which is a song that the Nips did that is really fun, but it's also just, it's nothing like anything the Pogues ever did, right? It's the Pogues are like 3 or 4 gears higher. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these guys, I think they were in other like obscure punk bands and kind of got tired of that. There wasn't enough substance in it. It didn't mean anything. And so then they found each other and did this.
So I wonder if that's just the Irishness of the Pogues, that there's a different mentality kind of coming out of Ireland as opposed to England at that time. And I don't know. I just suppose that. I don't know if that's true or not. But I mean, certainly you look at U2. I mean, they are in their early days about this same time, and there's just something different about what was coming out of Ireland maybe at that time than what we were getting out of England at that time.
I got the Waterboys on my turntable right here. Same kind of thing. It was like a bigger, more ambitious, right? More to talk about, more to say.
Are we in the time of the Troubles, or is that more in the 90s? I mean, just because like politically there was kind of a lot happening in Ireland, but I don't remember what that time frame was.
So the Birmingham 6 thing was the subject of one of the songs in If I Should Fall from Grace with God, right? Mm-hmm. And was it a train station that they blew up?
I think so.
And then they went, I don't know. I remember traveling in like the mid 90s and there were no trash cans in any of the train stations. And when I asked someone why, they laughed at me like, you don't have any idea what's going on around here. I think probably were, right? Sunday Bloody Sunday, all that stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that just kind of naturally impacts your songwriting if that's what's kind of happening around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because London was kind of the epicenter of the punk scene, right? And you had these bands forming like U2 and the Pogues, kind of influenced by the Ramones and Sex Pistols at the time, even though Ramones were, U.S. But, they aspired or were influenced by the Sex Pistols, but the content became just so different because what their experiences that they were drawing on in their home country of Ireland and, the turmoil between the Prods and the Catholics and all that stuff. I'm listening to Bono's autobiography, the 40 Songs presently, and it's really good, and it touches a lot on this. Like, he couldn't wait to get to London, and it was this shock and awe of seeing this punk scene, and then yet while he was influenced so much by the Ramones and aspired to see the Sex Pistols, like they went such a different way with their music. His dad was very operatic and into that side of music, so who knows how that influenced it. And I guess we're getting off track with this tribute to Shane here, but I think it's just a testament to the time and there's Celtic folk that just is embedded in the Irish people, and even in the Scottish have their own version, but the Irish have always had Irish folk very embedded into their traditions. And then that storytelling and influence, I think, comes through all of the Irish bands and singers that come later. Even if they go Irish punk, like it's still that Irish folk is still embedded in their influence.
Well, it's totally what I was going to say, is that there's this folkiness that's in these songs that I almost don't know if you hear from any other region. Just the storytelling and just all of that is just kind of unique maybe to that area, maybe at this time. And I guess one of the things that's kind of interesting is that you don't, I guess you don't hear that anymore, at least not from bands that at the time probably would have been considered a little more popular. I mean, certainly people were hearing these bands out playing and could definitely relate to the folk side of these songs. I mean, that's the thing that makes them so popular in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So Shane kind of had a foot in both camps, right? He lived in London, went to school in London, grew up English, but also, at least if that, based on that documentary, what's it called? The Crock of Gold.
I think
you should watch it. It's on Amazon Prime, I think. He'd summer in Ireland with family there, like in the countryside, right? So you had this city and country thing. He had this England and Irish thing, and rather than have that mean you have no identity at all, he kind of blended it into something that was really unique and powerful, and is a model now, right? So you've got the Dropkick Murphys, which are like, hey, we're Irish, but we're Boston. Have we told you we're from Boston? Hey, guess what? Like, we're from Boston. It's often imitated, right? It's never quite the same as these folks who did it the first time and really effectively integrated those things. And I'm guessing that was probably a hard thing to do, right? If you were, maybe not. I was going to say, like, if you were a punk rocker, there's a kind of fundamentalism around that, which is that it's got to sound like this, right? You have to hate everything. So if you like folk music, if you like what your grandfather liked, you're not following the rules. But maybe by the 80s, that was less true. Susie wasn't playing punk rock either. Chrissie Hynde wasn't, right? Like, people had kind of put that behind them, but had taken what was good about it, what was vital about it, and what was fun, and infused it into other things. And Shane's angle was just a really unique and awesome one, that he was really grounded in a kind of experience that made it feel genuine and authentic, right? Like, he didn't go to a war and fight in a war, but like, he could sing in A Pair of Brown Eyes about it, and it's believable.
I mean, I think that's just the power of culturally their storytelling. Like, they're all storytellers.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that even, in newer modern bands like Flogging Molly, even though they're really considered an American band, that their lead singer who formed the band, Dave King, is Irish. Again, their songs are kind of the same way, that they are kind of these little stories, and I just think it's an interesting phenomena of kind of that style of music, and nobody embodied that better, or probably ever will, than Shane MacGowan.
Yeah, I would guess that, like, the Irish experience over the generations and the trauma of it, and just being beaten down over and over again, gets stamped into your DNA in a way that makes you carry more of it with you than Americans. Like, we're not defined.
Well, we probably don't have an
war.
Equivalent of that, probably, except for the early years of hip hop and R&B.
Yeah.
Where you have those artists writing lyrics about their living experiences. Like, they were writing about things that were happening to them or their friends or family, And I feel like these songs are kind of the same way, that these are, even if the stories are generational, like they're things that they heard their grandparents and parents talk about, and it was easy for them to write them into songs. And I can't think of really anything else that kind of comes across the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, just think of the Irish storytellers. I mean, like, and I'm not even going to get into like super folky ones like the Chieftains and, you know, like, they're getting deep there, but like U2. And I'm only on U2 right now because I'm going to see them in a few weeks, but also I'm doing the book right now. But we all know what a great songwriter Bono is and how eccentric he is. And like, you know, again, a lot of amazing songwriting and storytelling there within his work. The Pogues, right? So Shane MacGowan, who we're talking about today, and his brilliance. Can we talk about Van Morrison for a second and his brilliance?
Yeah.
Right. Another incredible like singer songwriter, Sinead, which we mentioned in here before, like the amazing, you know, storytelling she did through her music. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Rory Gallagher. I mean, we could argue Dolores O'Riordan had some great storytelling, like, you know, and I'm missing
House
a
of
ton
Pain.
People. I'll house your ass like John McEnroe. Anyway.
Chalk flew up.
Anyway,
Sorry,
that's a good
you're on a
song.
roll.
yeah. Now I'm just lost. So maybe that's a good cue to stop rambling and give our listeners a break.
Well, you know, I think it comes across that you know, I don't know if any of us would call ourselves the world's greatest Pogues fans necessarily. I mean, we're certainly all familiar with their music. It's always fun to hear. And I think the thing that always makes it fun to hear is that there is this story aspect to all of their songs. And so when they come on, they're like you just feel like you're getting swept up in the song. And to me, that always makes a song fun and memorable and kind of sticks with you, is when you feel like you understand where this song is coming from. And without a doubt, that's the way all 4 of these tracks come across.
Couldn't agree more. And I did prepare a little quote from Shane MacGowan before we close out, just because I thought it was pretty great.
Yeah.
Which he says, "Cram as much pleasure as you can into life and rail against the pain that you have to suffer as a result." Classic Shane.
That's
MacGowan.
Exactly how he lived.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I think those were 4 great songs. That's kind of our little tribute and thinking about Shane MacGowan and incredible career. And it left us with a ton of really amazing and memorable songs. So,
Absolutely.
all right, guys.
Very good.
Well, thanks for jumping on and recording this episode, and we hope you guys enjoy it. And stay tuned. We've got more to come.
Yeah.
We'll be seeing you again, laddies.
Oh, God.
Maybe.
Did I ruin the whole episode there? Sorry. I'm sorry. It's not St. Pat's Day. My bad.
I think that sounded more Welsh than anything.
We always go through this.
So my Canadian, Scottish,
Right.
Irish accent.
Oh.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Oh. Are you going to play us out, Brad?
Play us out, Brad.
Sure.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Bravo.
That's that second note. I just can't hit that second note.
All right. Until next
All
time.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you guys.
Love to you, Shane MacGowan. Bye.
Rush of far progressive